So the session started after the party had rested up some more, and they then split into two groups. Firth and Frank were going shopping, while Blank and Yord wanted to go and speak with the village elder about getting some property so then they could have a home base in Restone. They went up to his house and they heard a conversation going on between the two voices. This is the first time they've ever met the village elder, Thaddeus Ironwood, who is a wise old man who kind of dictates what's ethically right and wrong, and sort of helps on the law in that way, while there is a sheriff who roams around various villages in the area and he physically enforces it. So if you get on his bad side, then you'll get thwacked. But that's beside the point. This conversation was Clifton Caldwell, who they've worked for before, and the village elder. When they entered and started chatting, Clifton was able to give them sort of a glowing recommendation, saying that they had worked for him before and that they were a great group of adventurers. While the numbers have changed up a little bit with a few members dying and changing around, Clifton fully supported them wanting to get some property. Clifton actually had some property that he was happy for the adventurers to purchase from him. He told them that a couple of miles out from his castle, there's an old lodge that has seen better years, so it does need some sprucing up. But they can purchase it from him for 2,500 gold pieces, which the party should be able to afford, really, based on how much gold that they've actually collected. So they said that they'd have to go and have a look at it, and then with that, then they purchase it. The village elder said that most houses here are houses that people have lived in for, generations. It's not like they just set new ones up all the time. They would probably, if they wanted to, sure, they can do, because the village elder knows that they've helped the village out in various ways. However, they'd need to buy the land and everything like that. They don't just have a house to purchase. That's sort of going on the rules of strongholds and things. So they said to Clifton they would go and visit Amberside Lodge in the future, but they had some things to clear up now. So now we cut to Frank and Firth, who are walking through town after they've just purchased some basic supplies, slings and stuff like that, and flasks. And they were interrupted by a farmer who comes running down the lane screaming. He's beaten and terrified, and he starts saying that there are these, the plants in his farm have come to life. This is Farmer Haydock, and he pleads that the party help him out, or someone can get help. He runs along telling them to go and spread the word, and then he runs towards the tavern, seeing if he can form a group together. Most of the village obviously are farmers and that sort of thing. So the party grew up, and they then head off to Haydock Farm. This is obviously their potion antics that they'd had a few sessions earlier. This is the result of that. When they arrive there, they see some small, cabbage and turnip sort of people. They're living cabbages. They almost look like Halloween carvings. And they're about 3 foot tall, and they're just going around causing terror, throwing things around, pulling up, uprooting vegetables and eating them. One that does stand out, however, is a very large pumpkin. It's about 2 meters tall by 2 meters wide, and it is shoveling up the earth and everything in its path, and it's just carving out this path of destruction. And when the party arrived, it had made its way over to a large oak tree, and it was uprooting this oak tree and just tearing it apart and devouring it. And they could see that with every bite that it got, it started to grow a little larger and a little larger. So they pulled from another field. They went and uprooted some vegetables there and made a pile just by the roadside, and then they doused it all with oil and made a Firth sort of snuck forward and made a breadcrumb trail out of pieces of vegetables that these other vegetables were eating, these cannibal cabbages, and laced that all with oil. So all of these rabid vegetables come running down, following the route, and then they are set on fire, but a few of them survive. So the party starts to fight with them, but what they didn't realise was that this big pumpkin, has some druidic magic, and so it caused roots of all the plants to burst up from the earth and wrap around the party, entangling them. But that didn't stop the party. A lot of them have ranged weapons now, and they were just firing ranged weapons, cutting into it, And when they were able to get formation, they all were able to beat on this giant pumpkin and destroy it. After this fight, where most of the party actually only got a little bit of damage taken, it was one of the most successful fights that they've had so far. They journeyed back to the village and were telling everyone that, yep, the problem's solved, there's no more rabid cannibal cabbages, the villagers don't have too much cash to spare, and so what was given to them was some horses and a carriage, or one horse and a carriage, which Frank named Donkey Kong. So Frank now has a pony that he got from Castle Caldwell called Yonkers, and the party has a horse called Donkey Kong. Yeah. So after all this, they went on towards the church where they had another quest to complete. They arrived there and they spent a good bit of time just having some tomfoolery, where they were just joking around with the monks and just tricking them and stuff like that. It seems like any figure of authority that the party comes into contact with, they have to mess with them, which is kind of funny to interact with, especially when in this situation the priestess, she is requesting help for them. So she has to be firm, but then also a bit reserved and like let them get away with it a little bit. Quest here is that the priestess has asked someone to help out because there has been a grave robbery going on more frequently than they've ever experienced before. There's been a handful of graves that have been dug up, but also the grave keeper has now gone missing. Every single time this has happened at night, and the graveyard, at night time at the graveyard, there's always some mist that comes in, and so they've been using this mist, these thieves have been using this mist to get into the graveyard unnoticed. One monk had said that he'd seen a figure, but he was too scared to go into the grave at night. The party found that in this large mausoleum that's at the bottom of the graveyard, there is a stairwell that leads down into an old crypt. But before that, they were, messing around, as I said. Frank and Jord got caught by the priestess digging up a grave, and she took the shovels off them and told them to group up with the party. And after that, the party descended down into the crypt. There they saw a statue of a deity, the Mistress of Graves, which is Weejaz, the deity from Greyhawk. So this is kind of like a pseudo Greyhawk stuff. I'm taking a lot of things from Greyhawk to put it in because old school essentials, that old school vibe. And so they saw this statue and they were like, sort of impressed with that. Thought it was a bit strange though compared to the the Pelor based pantheon that's up in the church. It's very by the sun sort of iconography. And so they moved along into another room where they found a series of common graves stacked up on top of each other, these coffins that are stacked up on top of each other, some urns around the room. But at the far side, there was a chest, and in front of the chest, the body of a thief who was led out in a pool of his own dried blood. The party went towards this body and they dragged it away for inspection, and they brought it up to the church to have a look at it. And what they noticed was that this body had been covered in large, thick scratch marks and flesh had been torn away. So the body had been partially eaten. They asked the priestess if she knew what it was, and she said she didn't. She isn't trained on sort of supernatural or whatever creatures could do this. She doubts that it would be like wolves or anything. And Frank, in seeing this, he declares that this is a werewolf. What's happening here is the gravekeeper is a werewolf who's gone rogue, and he has been eating the thieves, and now he's hiding out somewhere. And so they wait out for night to come. A few of them climb into the tree that's in the graveyard. So Jord, Frank and Blank are in a tree, while Firth and the rest of the retainers are all in the church looking at the graveyard through a window. And as night arrives, the moon ascends into the sky and everywhere is illuminated in this ghostly blue light. A mist swathes through and blankets the graveyard, and they wait. And then there's a rumbling from the ground as they hear scratching of dirt. And that is where we left the session. It was as usual, the party has gotten a lot more confident over these last couple of sessions. They're just sort of doing whatever they want now, interacting with NPCs a lot more, which I really like. Them just messing around with the priestess, while obviously RP, I'm sort of acting annoyed. I absolutely love it. It's great to just see them playing around and interacting with the world a lot more, seeing it more as a world than a game. That's good to see. I think they're really getting into the roles of it. More creative thinking, actually. I forgot to mention that the gates to the graveyard, Firth made a salve out of some wolfsbane that he had and garlic that he'd picked up from the general store. And so he made this salve, and then he lathered the gate in this salve to sort of ward off if it's a werewolf. They also joked about it maybe being a vampire. The only thing that they have is that it was bitten. The bodies have been bitten at night. That's all that it is that makes them think it's a werewolf. But they took the theory and they ran with it. So next session, clearly the graveyard dungeon and whatever's coming next. I'm looking forward to it. I won't spoil what it is. Let me know what you think it could be. So at night, there's been bodies being brought up and things being stolen. But yeah, holes in the graveyard, and it always occurs at night. There's a humanoid-esque figure. That's what the monks have seen. I thought just to go through, because I'd had a comment about what level the party are and things like that. So, and all of the party are level 1, apart from Blank. The party members, so the cast that we have, is Blank, who is an assassin. He's a level 2 assassin. Then we have Frank, a level 1 halfling. Jord, a level 1 gnome. Firth, a level 1 druid. And then the retainers, we have Bros, a level 1 fighter, and Rory, a level 1 ranger. And then in addition to that, there is the dog, Junior, who is also called Clifton. That is Blank's dog. He's called Junior because Clifton named him Clifton adopted him, and he was already called Clifton, so he called him Junior, and but he just goes by Junior now. Yonkers and Donkey Kong, the pony and the horse. So it's a fairly big group, and they're using the retainers a lot more now, which is good to see. Bros is sort of taking the front line, and Rory's. It's always good to get that extra damage out, firing his arrows from the back line along with Blank. Blank has actually taken a ranged approach. In fact, tell a lie, most of the party is taking a ranged approach now, as they're realising, standing in front of enemies. A lot of these enemies have been physical things. The pumpkin, is long, sort of tentacle-like vines and things. But, yeah, they haven't fought too many ranged creatures, which, could change in the near future. We'll have to see. As always, thank you very much for watching. Comment down below if you've got any questions, or if you just want to tell me about your campaign, how your games are going. At the moment, this quest is just a homebrew thing that I've come up with. So they've done Castle Caldwell. There is still the rest of the Tomb of the Serpent King to do. And I haven't got any other module stuff prepped, but I was thinking, depending on how the adventures go, I might just start to move them towards just running through modules, just because it's easier for prep time and things like that for me. But I'd want to do like a natural progression for that. Horror on the Hill, I think, is one adventure that I've been eyeing up, which could work. It's just a matter of getting the party to do that and seeing what the party wants. If they would just rather keep with this pseudo homebrew setting that I've got going on. But yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.